Yorgos Lanthimos is a Greek filmmaker that has risen in popularity over these past couple of years.
This is a portrait of Emily.
It's so rude.
His films are well known for having a distinct surreal tone that mixes dry humor with an uncomfortable sense of bleakness. On top of that, there's his use of distorted wide-angle lenses, naturalistic set designs, slow foreboding zooms, and the stilted deadpan performances from his actors. Because of the bizarre way his films often operate, there are some people who cannot get into his films. It's understandable how some people may draw the conclusion that his films are just weird and edgy for the sake of being weird and edgy. I mean, why would a director not ask for an actor to put more emotion into a performance? Why would a director want a weird shot that looks like this? Why would a director choose such eerie music for what's supposed to be a comedy film? However, I think a key factor for understanding Lanthimos' filmmaking language can be found in one of his biggest influences. It's not another film or another filmmaker, it's actually an entire philosophical concept, Plato's cave allegory. For those who don't know, this allegory involves people who've been trapped in a cave for all their life. The only reality to the prisoners is the shadows which are shown on the cave walls. Because of this, when the prisoners are set free, they view our world as completely absurd and unbelievable. Overwhelmed by our real world, the prisoners return to the cave and decide that their version of reality is superior. This is a concept that Lanthimos has very openly taken inspiration from, and it comes across in almost every one of his films. Characters living in a distorted version of reality that they choose to accept because they don't know anything else. Movies that look at our worlds through a fresh pair of eyes, drawing attention to the absurdity of society and human nature that we've accepted as normal. Although he may not be for everyone, he's easily one of my favorite filmmakers to recently come out of the 2010s. Technically, we'll get to you shortly. With the introduction out of the way, let's get to the ranking. Keep in mind, these are just my dumb opinions, you don't have to agree with them.
So,
That's a very good frame.
I guess for a while I thought it was, a very, Stop it. For a while I thought she was a very difficult character to play, but then I realized, in a way, it was only because she was
Yeah, Ketta is not a very good directorial debut, to put it lightly. Way too emotionless, tedious, and uneventful for my liking. Weirdly enough, my thoughts on this movie are quite similar to my thoughts on Stanley Kubrick's directorial debut, Fear and Desire. It's an interesting film in the context of Yorgos Lanthimos' filmmaking career, but the actual film itself just leaves me wondering, Lanthimos, what the hell were you even going for here? I could give a more in-depth review, but what would even be the point? It's boring, that's all you need. Although Alps isn't nearly as bad as Ketta, it is pretty mid. The film has some funny dark comedy and a really interesting concept. It's essentially a film about a group of people who provide a service for families dealing with the death of a loved one where they stand in as the dead person to help the family grieve. A fucked up concept, but that's nothing new for this director. However, the execution of the concept is very messy. This movie isn't nearly as boring as Ketta, but it still moves at a very slow pace. Now, there's nothing wrong with slow-paced movies, there's a lot of them that I love, but I don't think it really works for this movie. It's not a bad film, but it's an underwhelming one because it had the potential to be better.
I can think of at least two things wrong with that title.
Kinds of Kindness is a polarizing film that I still like quite a bit. I already talked about this movie in my favorite films of 2024 video, but I'll talk about it some more here. This is a twisted and fucked up anthology film comprised of 3 separate segments. The first follows a man whose entire life is controlled by his boss, the second follows a man who believes his wife has been replaced by a doppelganger, and the third follows members of a sex cult. Alright, cross that one off the list. Let's see if I can knock out at least one more of these today. All 3 of these segments are full of dark, dry, and often uncomfortable comedy. Both the second and third segments are excellent, being wonderfully absurd, provocative, and strange. However, the first segment took a while for me to get into. It isn't bad, I actually like it quite a bit, but it is definitely the weakest point of the film. I also feel like as a whole, the film kinda goes on for a little too long. As much as I loved the third segment, I was starting to feel feel a tad exhausted near the end of it. But overall, despite those issues, I still think this film is pretty amazing. It's not one of Lanthimos' best, but I'd still recommend watching it if you haven't already.
Yorgos kind of invited me in that it was just like this very sweet little simple email that he asked me to come play. Like, that's the word he used. And like, I'm gonna come in, see what happens. And it felt safe to do that, so it was cool.
If I get that email, I'd call the police.
Rabbit season! Duck season! Rabbit season! Duck season! Rabbit season! Duck season!
I was finishing my lunch when I started The Killing of a Sacred Deer, so I want to thank Yorgos for starting the movie on a shot of open heart surgery. It wasn't unpleasant or unappetizing at all. Besides that, I enjoyed this movie a lot. Colin Farrell, Barry Keoghan, and Nicole Kidman all gave fantastic performances in this film. The deadpan style of dialogue works really well here, as usual for Yorgos Lanthimos. The cinematography is great and utilizes distorted wide-angle lenses in a cool and interesting way. The score does an incredible job at complementing the film's uncomfortable atmosphere. Speaking of, this movie is very unnerving and unsettling. However, the film still manages to have a funny and twisted sense of humor. Although it's not as memorable as some of Lanthimos' other films, it's still an amazing and strange movie that I'd recommend watching. Beonia is Yorgos Lanthimos' latest movie, and it's pretty damn great. I watched this in an empty theater, which is always a weird mix between a happy feeling and a sad feeling. Happy because it means no entitled douchebags will disrupt my experience, but also sad because of how lonely it feels. It's like, damn, I was the only one interested in watching this movie. To be fair though, the empty theater probably has to do with the fact that I watched this on a Wednesday night instead of the weekend. Anyways, this movie is a ton of fun. Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, and Aidan Delbus all give phenomenal performances in this film. The characters they play often bounce between being empathetic figures to being horrible people, making for tons of entertaining moments and character dynamics. The cinematography is beautiful, using wide-angle lenses and vibrant colors to great effect. The score is at times bombastic and at times eerie. Then of course there's the writing. This film is a remake of a South Korean film named Save the Green Planet, which I have not seen. This film is also written by Will Tracy, who wrote The Menu, and I think he did a really good job here. Just like the rest of Lanthimos' work, this film has a really funny and twisted sense of humor. I love the way the film critiques the selfishness of rich people, class issues, and modern conspiracy theory culture. The way this film tackles conspiracy theorists was particularly interesting, as it paints both Teddy and Dawn as these tragic characters swept up in the hive mind of this toxic and damaging culture. The film is also pretty suspenseful at times, especially in the insane third act. Speaking of, the ending of this movie is just absolutely incredible. It's not my favorite Lanthimos film, but it's still an amazing film that I'd recommend watching. Dogtooth is Yorgos Lanthimos' sitcom. This movie is very disturbing and very bizarre. It's really interesting to see this prototype version of Yorgos Lanthimos' style, one that doesn't have the quirky music or distorted wide-angle lenses. It almost feels more like a Michael Haneke movie than a Yorgos Lanthimos movie at times, while still having that distinct Lanthimos touch of surrealism. Oh yeah, did I mention this movie is fucked up? This movie has quite a few moments that made me wince uncomfortably in my seat, and I love that. It's a film that raises many questions about the ethics surrounding parents that flat out lie to their kids. It's a film that really makes you wonder, what would it feel like to realize you had been lied to your entire life? This is definitely not a movie for everyone, but I personally loved it.
Hey, Dad, I was just thinking, if you really were a woman, that would make you and Mom lesbians.
That's it. The cable's gone.
The Favorite is an incredible movie. This is arguably Yorgos Lanthimos' most accessible film, as it's not as surreal or as dark as many of his other films. However, the film still manages to have that unmistakable Yorgos Lanthimos style to it. The performances from Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz are brilliant. However, Olivia Colman without a doubt gives the greatest performance in this movie, and her portrayal of Queen Anne is simply marvelous. The classical music is gorgeous and fits the movie movie's tone wonderfully. The sets and costumes capture the time period of the film spectacularly. The story is also a really interesting work of historical fiction. The film uses these historical figures and events as merely the backdrop to a story about lust, class, sexuality, and mental health. On top of that, the film blends historical realism with playful modernism. For example, the cinematography uses rich colors and natural lighting to suit the time period, but it juxtaposes that with distorted wide-angle lenses. It makes the movie very unique. Lastly, as typical for Yorgos Lanthimos, the film mixes the drama with a quirky yet twisted sense of humor. This movie is just fantastic, and I'd highly recommend watching it if you haven't already. The Lobster is just brilliant. The cinematography is beautiful and captures the Ireland landscape in a beautiful way. The score somehow manages to be melancholic, haunting, and dreamlike all at the same time. I also love the writing in this movie. It's such a creative concept explored in such an intriguing way. It's a film about a dystopian future where single people are taken to a hotel and forced to fall in love and will be transformed into an animal if they don't succeed in time. Now, many people have criticized this film for having a great first half and an underwhelming second half. Although I do like the first half more, I still really enjoy the second half of this movie, and it does a great job at completing this film. It's a biting and blunt satire of how our society can often pressure people into love as well as pressure people out of love. It's a strange yet brilliant masterpiece that I'd highly recommend watching if you haven't already.
But I'm a happy guy because I got married. Married my girlfriend of 7 years. At her age, I'm going to jail.
Yep, Poor Things is my favorite Yorgos Lanthimos movie. I already talked about this movie in my favorite films of 2023 video, where it took the top spot as well. However, I still want to talk about it some more here. The surreal, colorful steampunk world that Yorgos Lanthimos creates in this movie is truly something to behold. It is easily one of the most visually unique movies of the whole decade. If that wasn't enough, it's also one of Lanthimos' funniest movies, having a sense of humor that's both silly and dry. However, despite that, the concept of the movie is a very disturbing one. The film follows the character of Bella Baxter, a woman brought back to life by a scientist who put her own baby's brain into the woman's head. It's through this messed up concept that the film explores many themes, most of them revolving around feminism and the patriarchy. Bella Baxter's desire for independence and freedom is constantly being thwarted by the men in her life who try to control and take advantage of her. It's really sad and tragic to watch the childlike innocence of this character be corrupted by these disgusting and pathetic men. Sure, it's gratuitous with the way it depicts the subject and definitely made a lot of people uncomfortable. However, it all serves the purpose of highlighting the importance of free will and how absurd it is that such a universal concept is only granted to a fraction of our world's population. This is just such a funny, dark, creative, magical, and powerful movie. It won't be for everyone, but I personally think it's a masterpiece. So yeah, that was my Yorgos Lanthimos ranking. If any of the movies I talked about sounded interesting to you, check them out. Next video, I'm talking about something completely random and nonsensical that I'm not actually going to make a video about. I just say that I will at the end of every video because I think it's funny. Wait, subscribe or something like that. Bye bye.